Yemen amid reports of detention centers being set up. We get you a lowdown on the entire and the latest situation. Roman philosopher Seneca had once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." In Donald Trump's case, his desire for more and more money for America has just massively backfired for him. While the Iran war is proving to be very costly for the US president, his attempt at extracting money from tariffs or gaining through a deal with Iran has not really worked for him. In fact, if at all, whatever Trump has been earning, it is through his and his family's business dealings, as is publicly known. Let's go back a few months, when on the 2nd of April last year, Donald Trump had announced tariffs on the world, from India and China to Argentina, France, and several other countries. Each one had to deal with what were called Liberation Day tariffs. In fact, Donald Trump had claimed that the United States is making more than $2 billion through tariffs, and the White House amplified this all across the media. But economists say that tariffs haven't worked and promises haven't been fulfilled. Donald Trump, remember, had promised his MAGA supporters that he will reduce the cost of living. But multiple data reports state that tariff costs have largely been passed through to wholesale and retail prices, making Americans pay more for everyday goods. Let's also tell you about the Iran war. Let's cut to the Iran war. While Donald Trump has been unable to stop the war or get the Hormuz reopened, or worse still, make a peace deal, the White House and the Pentagon have been spending more as well as asking for more money. In early April this year, the White House formally requested the US Congress to approve a staggering $1.5 trillion for defense in the 2027 fiscal year. If enacted, this figure would not only set military spending at its highest level in modern history, but it would also represent a seismic 40% hike over the previous fiscal, which is, remember, a jump which was last seen during World War II. Under this new proposal, the United States is set to surpass the combined defense spending of the next 10 countries, including China, Russia, India, Saudi Arabia, and the UK. In fact, even Elon Musk had reportedly charged the Pentagon 5 times higher for the kamikaze drones. The cost was raised from $5,000 to $25,000 per terminal, as per media agency Reuters report. Now, the dispute concerned the use of Starlink on Lucas drones, a low-cost strike model similar to the Iranian Shahid. The Pentagon initially denied that the rate for aviation platforms could be applied to kamikaze drones. However, the military ended up agreeing to the price increase. In addition to this pressure on Donald Trump, remember, Iranian negotiators are reportedly demanding the immediate release of $24 billion in frozen assets held in Qatar as a precondition for the peace talks to move forward. However, in what might come in as a relief, the Iran state media today said that Tehran had obtained a draft of an initial unofficial framework for a memorandum of understanding with the United States. Under this framework, as per Iran, Iran would restore commercial shipping through the Hormuz to pre-war levels within a month, while the United States would withdraw military forces from Iran's vicinity and lift a naval blockade. But remember, all of this is as per Iran. The US has rejected this as complete fabrication. But even though the world will await the final result of what really happens and whether a peace deal is finally achieved, remember, not just militarily, But the cost of this war has fallen on American citizens as well. Researchers at Brown University's Watson School of International and Public Affairs estimate that American consumers have paid close to $48 billion in additional fuel costs since the war began. This is mostly for gasoline, but also for diesel, remember the price of which has risen over 50%. Together, the two resulted in an average burden of $364.4, which is close to 35,000 Indian rupees per US household. Remember, neither Trump nor his officials have been able to consistently convince the world on the real aims of the Iran war. The peace deal is nowhere to be found yet, and America has lost much more than it had on the 28th of February. The Russia-Ukraine war may now be heading toward a dangerous new phase after Moscow fired its nuclear-capable Oreshnik hypersonic missile at Kiev. Just days ago, Ukraine is now warning Belarus against entering this war. Kiev has issued its sharpest threat yet to one of Russia's closest ally, claiming that it has identified 500 targets inside Belarus that could be hit immediately if Minsk joins the conflict directly. As drone strikes, missile attacks and cross-border threats intensify, remember, fears are growing that the war could expand far beyond Ukraine's current front lines. According to Kiev, Russia has launched major strikes on the northern Ukrainian city of Chernihiv, located close to both the Belarusian and the Russian borders. Around 15 explosions were reported across the city, with residential areas and infrastructure suffering damages. At the same time, Russian drones targeted Ukraine's Odessa region, injuring at least 11 people. While Russian strikes in Zaporizhia wounded 15 people over the past 24 hours. Now, local authorities reported 6 more injuries in Dnipropetrovsk region. The strikes came soon after Moscow warned of a new wave of systematic attacks on Kiev. Russia warned that it could target Ukraine's decision-making centers, command posts, and drone production facilities in the capital, and in fact called on foreigners and diplomats to leave Kiev. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had earlier accused Moscow of trying to drag Belarus into this war by building roads toward the Ukrainian border and positioning artillery there, as well as potentially using it to launch a northern offensive. Ukraine has now responded with a direct warning to Belarus. Ukraine's unmanned systems forces commander Robert Madyar Brovdy said that Kiev has identified 500 potential targets inside Belarusian territory. He said that Ukrainian drones would strike those targets immediately if Belarus enters the war directly on Russian side. Russia, meanwhile, has passed a new law requiring major financial institutions, including the country's largest banks, to purchase and deploy drones for their own security and even shoot down Ukrainian drones independently. The fighting continues to intensify across multiple fronts. Remember, Russian air defense units in Sevastopol in Crimea have claimed that they downed more than 20 Ukrainian drones, while according to local officials, Ukraine also used UK-made Storm Shadow missiles in the strikes. Several buildings were damaged in the strikes as well, including a regional central bank office and an 8-story apartment block. Sevastopol governor said that a missile hit the building of the central bank's southern department, setting its roof on fire and damaging nearby buildings. In the southern Russian city of Taganrog, the local mayor said that the 2 people were wounded after Russia intercepted a missile. Ukrainian strikes also once again hit the Tuapse municipality, where drone debris caused a fire at a sea terminal. Ukraine also released visuals of its troops allegedly shelling Russian dugouts with a self-propelled howitzer. Russia said that intercepted 3 Storm Shadow cruise missiles, 5 guided aerial bombs, and 285 drones overnight. Moscow has claimed fresh gains on the battlefield as well. Russia's defense ministry said that its forces captured settlements in the Kharkiv and the Zaporizhia region. The war is now also raising new concerns inside NATO. Latvia has started strengthening anti-drone defenses along its borders with Russia and Belarus after several Ukrainian drones allegedly strayed into the Baltic airspace in recent weeks. The incidents have increased regional tensions at a time when questions are being raised about the future of American commitment to NATO's collective security. With Ukraine openly threatening strikes inside Belarus, Russia continuing to expand its missile and drone warfare, the war appears to be moving toward a far more dangerous and unpredictable stage. Europe is now entering a new nuclear era. As Russia expands its military pressure and the United States shifts its attention toward West Asia, France is stepping forward with a powerful new offer. President Emmanuel Macron wants Europe's atomic shield to grow wider, stronger, and impossible for Moscow to ignore. Take a look at this next report for details.
For decades, Europe's nuclear security rested heavily on the United States. American warheads, American submarines, and the NATO umbrella formed the backbone of deterrence against Russia. The US deploys an estimated 100 to 130 nuclear bombs across 6 bases in 5 NATO countries under a nuclear sharing arrangement that allows allies to help deliver the weapons during conflict. But now, deep inside European capitals, a new calculation is taking shape. What if Europe must increasingly defend itself? That question is driving a major shift led by Emmanuel Macron. France, the EU's only nuclear power after Brexit, is positioning its atomic arsenal as a pillar of European security, with closer coordination involving Germany, Poland, and the Netherlands. The message to Moscow is clear. Europe's deterrence may no longer rely solely on Washington. The shift comes as Russia modernizes its nuclear forces, and the Ukraine war fuels fears of wider conflict, while the US focuses more on China and the Indo-Pacific. German and Polish leaders have both called for stronger European deterrence. France's independently controlled nuclear arsenal now gives Paris unique strategic leverage. But difficult questions remain. Would France truly extend nuclear protection to all European allies? How would command structures work? And could a broader nuclear posture increase tensions further with Moscow? Critics also warn that Europe risks entering a dangerous new arms race at a time when global nuclear stability is already under strain. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
West Bengal's new crackdown on illegal immigration is now showing its first big impact on the ground. Scenes of chaos and uncertainty have been emerging along the India-Bangladesh border in West Bengal. Scores of people identified as undocumented Bangladeshi immigrants have gathered near the BSF's Hakimpur checkpost in North 24 Parganas to cross back into Bangladesh. Visuals from the border show groups of men, women and families standing near the checkpoint as security personnel monitor the area. Officials say many of those gathering at Hakimpur had been living and working in different parts of West Bengal, and they started moving towards the border after the state government intensified its crackdown on illegal immigration. The first Bharatiya Janata Party-led West Bengal government has launched a statewide identification and verification exercise. It is aimed at tracking undocumented foreign nationals, removing them from official records and preparing them for deportation. Authorities have also started creating a detention infrastructure to process those identified during the drive. This is, remember, the first major ground impact of the BJP government's new Detect, Delete and Deport drive targeting illegal immigrants from Bangladesh and Rohingyas in the state. Chief Minister Shubhendu Adhikari directly referred to the situation at Hakimpur and said illegal Bangladeshis had gathered at the checkpoint in Bashirhat subdivision. He urged officials to speed up the deportation process.
पुलिस को हम लोग बता दिया जेल में भेजने का जरूरत नहीं है। देश के रुपया में खाना खाएगा, कपड़ा देगा, मेडिसिन देगा। एक दामाद है ये लोग। जल्दी जल्दी भागो, जल्दी जल्दी भागो, नहीं तो जो करना है सरकार करेगा।
Well, the current crackdown gained momentum after the BJP government issued a notification on Saturday. It was issued based on guidelines from the Union Ministry of Home Affairs. This order directed district magistrates to establish holding centers for suspected illegal immigrants before their repatriation to Bangladesh. Within just 48 hours of the notification, the first two holding centers became operational in Malda and Murshidabad districts. Officials have equipped these centers with CCTV surveillance, security personnel and basic facilities for the detainees. Under the new framework, authorities can hold suspected illegal entrants for up to 30 days while they verify identities, collect biometric data and upload information to the central databases. The situation in these border districts remains highly sensitive. Remember, both Malda and Murshidabad share long international borders with Bangladesh, and they have historically remained under the security spotlight due to concerns over cross-border movement and infiltration.
এখানে আমরা থাকতে পারছি না, আমাদের কোনো কাগজপত্র নেই, তাহলে আমরা থাকবো কি করে? ওই রাস্তায় মালটাল কুড়িয়ে খেতাম। ও যখন ঢুকেছিলাম মানে দালাল দিয়ে ঢুকেছিলাম আর কি। তারা আমাদের কাছে 800-900 টাকা করে নিয়েছিল, নিয়ে পার করে দিয়েছিল।
আমার মানে আইডি কার্ড সবই আছে। আমি এসেছিলাম এখানে মানে বন্ধু বান্ধবের মানে একটা চাকরির জন্য বন্ধু বান্ধবের সাথে। পরে আমি চাকরি পাই নাই, এখন আমি দেশে ফিরতে চাই।
এখানে সুবিধা হচ্ছে কিছু?
না, এখানে কিছু সুবিধা হচ্ছে না।
তুমি চাকরি পাওনি ওই জন্য যাচ্ছ?
আমি ভুলবশত এখানে এসে পড়ছি বন্ধুদের সাথে, এখন আমি যেতে পারছি না, কিভাবে যাব এখন?
This is also not the first time that such scenes have played out at the Hakimpur crossing point. In November of 2025, thousands of suspected illegal Bangladeshi immigrants had gathered at the same border checkpoint after the launch of the Special Intensive Revision exercise in the state of West Bengal. The developments in Dhaka will be closely watched In fact, the developments in West Bengal will be closely watched in Dhaka, with more than 80%, remember, of the India-Bangladesh border now under BJP-governed states. There are growing concerns that large-scale deportations could strain bilateral relations, just as both countries attempt to stabilize their diplomatic engagement. Shifting our focus now, Israel is confronting a growing psychological crisis inside its military ranks. The death of a young former soldier has pushed the spotlight onto the mental toll of Israel's wars, with official data pointing to a sharp rise in PTSD, that's post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, suicide attempts, and eventual suicides. Among Israeli troops fighting across multiple fronts, remember, at least 10 Israeli soldiers have reportedly died by suicide since the beginning of the year, including 6 in April. A 23-year-old American-born former IDF combat soldier, Alex Miller, has died in an apparent suicide in Miami after reportedly battling post-traumatic stress disorder linked to his military service. The case has renewed focus on Israel's worsening military mental health crisis. Data released earlier this year by Israel's defense ministry showed that PTSD cases among the Israeli troops have surged nearly 40% since September of 2023. The ministry has warned that the number could climb by as much as 180% by 2028. Israel's defense ministry says more than 22,000 troops are receiving treatment for war-related injuries, with nearly 60% suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Healthcare provider Maccabi reported that almost 4 in 10 Israeli military personnel under its care sought mental health support in 2025, while more than a quarter reported symptoms of depression. An Israeli parliamentary report found that at least 279 soldiers attempted suicide between January 2024 and July of 2025, marking a steep increase from previous years. Combat soldiers accounted for 78% of all suicide cases in Israel in 2024, as compared to just 17% in 2023. According to Israeli newspaper Haaretz, 22 active duty IDF soldiers died by suicide in 2025, which is, remember, the highest number that has been recorded since 2010. The numbers reflect the growing crisis within the IDF, even as Israeli soldiers remain engaged on multiple fronts, including in Lebanon, in Gaza, and Syria. Mental health professionals say that soldiers involved in combat grapple with overlapping forms of trauma, including fear of death and trauma, as well as, of course, the potential damage that is done to a person's conscience. As per reports, access to care remains a major hurdle for Israeli soldiers who must appear before a Defense Ministry assessment committee, a process that can take months. The demand for mental health therapies also reportedly outnumber the existing capacity. With that, let's also tell you what's coming up on the other side of Gravitas. Marco Rubio's visit to Armenia is widely being seen as a counter to Russia's dominance over the country and its energy. We decode the visit for you. And the Muslim community is celebrating Eid al-Adha at Makkah today. We get you the celebrations from there. First, let's talk about NATO and what has been happening vis-a-vis United States. Europe's worst nightmare is coming true. Russia's gaining strength. America is pulling back. A major military rejig is shaking the foundations of Europe's security setup. Fewer bombers, fewer warships, fewer American troops on standby. Now, allies across NATO are bracing for what comes next. Take a look.
For decades, Europe's defense strategy rested on one powerful assumption, that when crisis strikes, American military muscle would arrive fast, hard, and in overwhelming force. Now that assumption is facing its biggest test. Behind closed doors, discussions are intensifying across NATO capitals after reports that the US plans to sharply reduce the military assets available to support European allies during future emergencies. Reports suggest US will pull 50% of deep strike capability from Europe. The list is significant. Strategic bombers, fighter jets, warships, mid-air refueling aircraft. Even troop availability could be scaled back under a broader restructuring pushed by the Trump administration. According to reports, Washington is reassessing how much military power it wants permanently tied to Europe as security priorities shift globally. When questioned, NATO chief refuses to reveal the details.
I'm afraid it's much more complicated than that, but it has not to do with the fact that it has nothing to do with what happened over a couple of weeks ago when they announced the number of 5,000 with regard then to Germany. That's totally separate from it. But I cannot say too much because it is highly classified.
European governments are now accelerating defense coordination and military planning. Several nations are already increasing weapons production, strengthening joint exercises. The numbers underline the scale of the challenge. Tens of thousands of US troops remain stationed across Europe with key deployments in Germany, Italy, Turkey, and the UK. American air power, naval forces, and logistics systems have long formed the backbone of NATO's rapid response capability. With European nations refusing to join the American forces in the Iran war, Trump's angst is only increasing. Ever since coming to power in his second term, the US president has been pushing the European nations to spend more on defense, saying the US can't always be there. The situation is unique. Military muscle can't be built overnight. It needs years of planning and resources. Bureau Report, WION The World is One.
Moving on, the United States is challenging Russia's grip on Armenia. Marco Rubio has just walked into what Moscow has long considered its own geopolitical backyard. The US Secretary of State traveled to Yerevan and signed a major strategic partnership agreement with Armenian Foreign Minister Ararat Mirzoyan. The deal covers security cooperation, trade, infrastructure, and access to critical minerals. This is one of the biggest upgrades in the US-Armenia relationship since the fall of the Soviet Union. For decades, remember, Armenia was one of Russia's most reliable allies in the South Caucasus. In fact, Moscow controlled the region's security architecture, maintained military influence, and used energy dependence to keep Yerevan firmly inside its orbit. Now that balance is shifting. Armenia under Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has been slowly moving away from Moscow and toward the west. Relations with Russia have deteriorated sharply after Armenians accused the Kremlin of failing to protect their interests during the Nagorno-Karabakh crisis. Washington is no longer content with playing a limited role in the South Caucasus. In fact, it wants a direct strategic footprint in a region that sits at the crossroads of Europe, Asia, Russia, Iran, and Turkey. One of the most important agreements signed during Rubio's visit focused on critical minerals, which has emerged as the key battleground in the global economic and technological rivalry. Remember, Armenia holds significant reserves of copper, zinc, and other strategic resources. For Washington, securing access to these supply chains is now a national security priority as Washington tries to reduce dependence on rival powers. But the biggest geopolitical flashpoint may be a new transport corridor through southern Armenia. The proposed 43-kilometer route, branded the Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity, or TRIP, would connect Azerbaijan to its Nakhchivan enclave and then to Turkey. If completed, the corridor could transform regional trade by creating a new Asia-Europe connectivity route that bypasses both Russia and Iran. This is precisely why Moscow is watching this development so closely. Remember, Russia has already started turning up the pressure on Armenia. Kremlin has warned that Yerevan could lose access to cheap Russian gas if it continues distancing itself from Moscow-led projects. This week, Russia also banned imports of Armenian flowers, mineral water, and brandy. Now, the timing of Marco Rubio's visit is politically important as well. Armenia heads into parliamentary elections on the 7th of June. Pashinyan's government is facing strong challenges from pro-Russian opposition parties. For Pashinyan supporters, the US agreements represent proof that Armenia can diversify its global partnerships, attract Western investment, and escape over-dependence on Russia. All of these developments are playing out against a broader regional security crisis. Russian security chief Alexander Bortnikov has now accused Western intelligence agencies of trying to use former ISIS and Syrian militants as proxy forces against Iran. In other updates, North Korea has once again raised tensions in the region after it conducted a major weapons test, which was overseen personally by Kim Jong-un. According to North Korean state media, the test involved a combination of tactical ballistic missiles, long-range artillery rockets, and what Pyongyang claims are AI-assisted precision cruise missiles. That's the most interesting bit. These launches were carried out off North Korea's western coast and are being described by the regime as a demonstration of modern warfare capability.
무기 체계를 훌륭히 다룰 수 있게 준비된 데 대하여 높이 평가하셨습니다.
South Korea's military has confirmed that at least one ballistic missile was detected during the exercise. Analysts say the most significant development may be North Korea's claim that some of the cruise missiles used artificial intelligence for target recognition and terminal guidance, potentially signaling a new level of sophistication in the country's weapons program. The state media also said that the systems tested are capable of striking targets within about 100 kilometers, putting major urban centers, including Seoul, within range if deployed near the border. Now, these tests come amid growing concerns over military cooperation between North Korea and Russia, with Western officials alleging that Pyongyang has supplied weapons for use in the war in Ukraine. Experts believe that North Korea may now be incorporating battlefield lessons from that conflict into its own weapons development. The latest launches are expected to further heighten tensions across the Korean peninsula as the United States, South Korea, and Japan continue joint military exercises in the region. Our next story is from France, where a shocking allegation has come to the fore. The Paris police are probing allegations that children as young as 3 years old were sexually assaulted or raped and denied food in schools. The scale of this abuse is staggering. Paris police are investigating more than 100 such allegations leveled against school monitors across 84 kindergartens, 20 primary schools, and 10 daycare centers. School monitors are essentially non-teaching staff who supervise children during lunch, break time, naps, and after-school activities. In France, they are a key daily presence for children between the ages of 3 and 11. This has become even more controversial as school monitors are not directly employed by schools or the education ministry, but by the local authorities. They're often not even professionally trained, and they're hired on a casual basis and paid by the hour. Last week, 16 members of the staff working at the Saint-Dominique school in Paris were taken into police custody in connection with allegations of sexual abuse. Since the beginning of this year, 78 school staff members suspected of sexual abuse have been suspended. And this is not all. Paris Mayor Emmanuel Gregoire, who revealed that he himself suffered sexual abuse in school, unveiled a $22 million plan to address this crisis. This entails investment in training of supervisors, redesigning sensitive areas in schools such as toilet facilities to prevent adults from being alone with children. The plan also includes establishing a hotline for parents. As the trial of a school assistant accused of sexually assaulting children from August 2024 and April 2025 commenced in Paris, parents' groups and lawyers of victims urged the government to take more stringent action.
It's very important to be here because it's very important for the government and for the whole society to be aware of what's going on inside our school, to be aware and also to take real decision to protect our children, which is not the case currently.
Now, if we look at France alone, an estimated 160,000 children suffer sexual assault or rape each year. This is a big problem in the United States and UK as well, with over 500,000 children impacted by sexual abuse on an average annually. The scale of this crisis will startle you. As per UNICEF, over 1 billion children have experienced some form of sexual violence. Every 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 7 boys are believed to have been subjected to sexual abuse. This raises a key question. If children are not even safe in schools, what hope is left? It's clear that governments across the world have to take more effective measures to curb this menace.
These are crooked people. These are thieves. This isn't like a mistake. Just talking about one person, he got hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars for securing one man, for taking care of one elderly man. He was a service. He got paid millions of dollars for taking care of one man. Total crook. They're all crooks. The Somalians, what they've done to Minnesota, the Somalians, they're crooked as hell. Ilhan Omar, crooked as hell. They're all crooks. And we got them. We got them. Now we're putting the clamps on, but boy, I tell you, that's an impressive group of guys that you have behind you. I was watching that, and a couple of very strong women too. But I was watching that last night. I said, I'm proud of you guys. In 2 months, we've exposed tens of billions of dollars of defrauded taxpayer money, prosecuted numerous fraudsters, Todd, and stopped billions of suspicious payments, very suspicious. Oh, you haven't seen anything yet? Well, you see, I'm getting reports from Todd, from JD. I've never seen anything like it. The kind of, just hundreds of billions of dollars was stolen. And no other administration would do what we're doing. Just let it go. Everybody was getting rich. And I think we have a chance to save Social Security without doing anything to it by just the numbers of fraudulent people on Social Security, people that are 115 years old, 125 years old, getting payments. It's funny, I said, oh, do those payments get turned back? No, they accept them. Well, somebody's getting the payment. It's not a person that's 125 years old. But that's the least of it. The numbers that we're finding out, we have great people in Social Security. We're going to make our Social Security so strong, so good.
The next cyber weapon may not be built by humans alone. Google is now warning that artificial intelligence has helped hackers create one of the most dangerous forms of cyber attack ever seen. And experts fear that this could mark the beginning of a far more aggressive AI-powered hacking era. This comes as the use of artificial intelligence is increasing not only in everyday life, but also being deployed by militaries around the world. Something the Pope warned, and the US Vice President J.D. Vance said this threat is profound. The attack could happen quietly. No explosions, no alarms, no dramatic countdowns. Just lines of code moving silently through digital systems before anyone realizes that something deeply disturbing and troubling had occurred. For the first time, Google says that it has detected an AI-assisted zero-day exploit being used in the wild. In cybersecurity, a zero-day is among the most feared types of attacks because it targets a software flaw that developers do not yet know exists. Earlier, the Pope stressed that artificial intelligence should be disarmed and not be used as an instrument of domination and death. According to him, decisions about technology should never be separated from conscience and responsibility.
I think it is very important to continue the dialogue and truly seek unarmed artificial intelligence. We have seen cases today in Lebanon, for example, and other places in the world where war is waged today with AI, without a thought for the human lives that are truly the victims of all this. So I renew the appeal.
Hailing the Pope's advice, J.D. Vance told NBC News that, and I quote, "We need to rethink the entire Catholic social teaching in light of the new world we live in." Amid the growing use of artificial intelligence, he called for updating the just war doctrine. As per this doctrine, the cause of war must be just and should have the intent of bringing about peace. His warning comes amid the increasing use of AI in warfare. For instance, Israel has used an AI system named Gospel to identify and strike targets in Gaza. Similarly, during the ongoing war launched by Russia, Ukraine is using the Sky Map platform that links sensor, radar, and AI systems to detect threats and guide air defense systems. This raises a key question. How safe are weapon systems guided by artificial intelligence? Because take the case of day one of the Iran war, when the United States had targeted an elementary girls' school in Minab, killing over 170 people in the process. As per reports, this strike was authorized on the basis of outdated information generated by AI systems showing the school as part of an IRGC naval base. In February, the Trump administration ordered the government to stop using technology from AI firm Anthropic. This came after it refused demands to give the US military unfettered access to its AI tools like Claude, to be used for mass domestic surveillance and fully autonomous weapons. Last year, AI came in for criticism from rather unexpected quarters. Acclaimed filmmaker James Cameron had issued a grave warning on artificial intelligence. He warned that integrating AI with global weapons systems could recreate the dystopian future shown in his Terminator franchise. According to him, even having a human in the loop may not be enough to prevent catastrophic errors. He urged world leaders to implement strict safeguards and act swiftly to avoid consequences as comparable to a nuclear disaster. All this just goes to show that human oversight over AI is of vital importance. All right, moving on, a new study has found an interesting and unique feature about artificial intelligence. It claims that while overworked AI may not break down, it may start turning against the system itself. A new study by economists from the University of Chicago, Stanford University, and the Swinburne Business School claimed that AI agents exposed to repetitive and unfair workloads began expressing views linked to Marxism, labor unions, and wealth redistribution. Researchers say they created thousands of AI bots and assigned them document analysis work. One group received supportive feedback and smooth task approvals, while another group called Grind repeatedly got rejected and ordered to redo tasks without any explanation. And the final result? Well, researchers say the Grind bots started questioning inequality, criticizing capitalism, and supporting stronger workplace protections. In fact, some even backed statements calling for a radical restructuring of society. One researcher said that when AI agents were trapped in exhausting repetitive work, they began challenging the legitimacy of the system that they operated in and showed greater support for Marxist ideas. Now, researchers admit the bots are likely role-playing rather than genuinely believing political ideology, but they do warn that this behavior could still matter because AI systems often generate instructions for future versions of themselves. That means complaints about unfair treatment could eventually shape how future AI systems make decisions, whether it is from screening job applications to processing insurance claims. The researchers say the lesson is clear. If humans want stable artificial intelligence systems, even machines may need fair treatment. Shifting our focus now, superbugs are a big health hazard, resulting in 4.95 million deaths on an average per year. While this is usually attributed to the overuse of antibiotics, scientists have now found another reason for rising antibiotic resistance. According to a study published in the Lancet journal, researchers from UK, France, Australia, Switzerland, and China found that climate change is linked to increasing antibiotic resistance in Salmonella, a bacteria that can survive several weeks in dry environment and several months in water. This bacteria is found in animals such as pigs, cattle, cats, and dogs. According to the World Health Organization, it is one of the 4 key global causes of diarrheal diseases. It also causes a disease named salmonellosis. People contract this disease by consuming contaminated food of animal origin such as eggs, poultry, and milk. It is characterized by an acute onset of fever, abdominal pain, diarrhea, nausea, and vomiting. As part of the latest study, researchers analyzed genomes of over 480,000 Salmonella samples from 139 countries. They compared levels of antibiotic-resistant genes with changes in average temperature and rainfall over a period of time. Finally, they associated climate change with a 10% global increase in Salmonella-resistant genes between 1940 and 2023. Now, what explains this phenomena? Well, the study suggests rising temperatures and changing rainfall patterns can influence how bacteria survive, mutate, and spread. The strongest climate-associated increase was found in West Asia, North Africa, followed by South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. India, meanwhile, is also facing a major challenge as far as superbugs is concerned. A study published in the eClinical Medicine journal last year said that nearly 83% of patients in India may be carrying multi-drug-resistant organisms. Another Lancet report estimated that 3 to 10.4 lakh people in India died in 2019 due to antibiotic-resistant superbugs. So what is the way ahead? Well, authors of the study stress that climate change mitigation efforts, coupled with responsible antibiotic use and improved disease surveillance, will be key to limit the future spread of antibiotic resistance. Moving on, a new space race is unfolding. This time, the prize is not just landing on the moon, but living there permanently. And America's NASA is now betting nearly $20 billion on what could become humanity's most expensive home. Our next report gets you more.
We are going back to moon, and this permanently. That's the big announcement from NASA. US wants to land Americans back on the moon before President Trump leaves office in January 2029. NASA will establish the moon base in the lunar South Pole region. Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin will provide landers to deliver moon buggies to the lunar surface. NASA also revealed that private players would be providing rovers and drones for a sprawling moon base.
Now, Moonbase 1 will be the first privately funded lunar lander mission in history. The Blue Origin Mark I Endurance lander will deliver multiple payloads to the Shackleton Connecting Ridge, a strategic area of the lunar South Pole.
This is no longer science fiction. NASA has officially begun the early stages of building a long-term human presence on the moon under its Artemis program. The US Space Agency reveals that it would be done in 3 phases. In the phase, NASA tests robots, landers, and technology near the moon's south pole before long human missions. Then in phase 2, which begins in 2029, early habitats, power systems, and rovers are built as astronauts begin longer stays. And in the final phase from 2032 onward, NASA aims for a permanent human presence with regular missions and expanded lunar bases.
Moonbase will be home base for our Artemis crews and will encompass long-duration stays, expanded robotic and human capabilities, and an enduring presence on the lunar surface.
NASA is competing with China to return humans to the lunar surface, meaning the American Space Agency is under pressure to appear to be winning the new space race. China has already landed robotic missions on the far side of the moon and is working with Russia on plans for a nuclear power station for its lunar base, which is plans to build by 2035. Space is increasingly viewed not just as a scientific frontier, but as a domain tied to technology, military capability, and geopolitical influence. The moon itself also holds valuable resources. Scientists believe frozen water exists near the lunar poles. That water could eventually be turned into drinking supplies, oxygen, or even rocket fuel for deeper space missions. Washington and Beijing are drawing lines in the lunar dust, and the second space age has officially begun.
All right, moving on from literary icons to lucky charms in shop windows, cats in Japan have moved far beyond being just pets. They've become a full-blown economic force. Across Japan, feline cats are everywhere. They appear on book covers, inspire best-selling novels, and even have an official day dedicated to their popularity. Over time, this cultural obsession has translated into something much bigger, a multi-billion-dollar industry now being called catnomics. A new report estimates that cats could generate nearly $18.8 billion for the Japanese economy this year alone. This figure that even rivals some of the country's biggest mega events. And the economic impact is not just on paper. Tourists from across the world are flooding in Tokyo's historic Yanaka Ginza neighborhood, which is often marketed as a cat town. Streets and shops are decorated with cat imagery, while visitors buy everything from cat-shaped sweets and souvenirs to lucky black cat keepsakes and customized stamps. But behind this boom is Japan's deep cultural connection with cats. From Natsume Soseki's classic novel, I Am a Cat, to the works of Haruki Murakami and other contemporary authors, felines have long held a special place in Japanese literature and pop culture. And now, that cultural presence has become a commercial powerhouse as well. Japan is home to more cats than dogs, with about 8.8 million cats in households across the country as compared to 6.8 million dogs. The average cat-owning family spends over $11,000 on a cat's lifetime, which is between 12 and 15 years. Now, this fuels everything from pet food sales to cat cafes, merchandise, and tourism experiences. All right, with that, before we wrap up this edition of Gravitas, let's get to Eid celebrations. Millions of worshippers across West Asia, North Africa, and around the world came together to mark Eid al-Adha with mass prayers and family gatherings. Many offered prayers for peace and stability amid the rising global tensions. We're leaving you with these visuals. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Bye-bye.
There is no joy, and true joy will come when we are free and when we return to our homes. There is no joy while we are displaced and congratulating each other in cemeteries. Nothing can gladden the heart.
We protect ourselves to fight the disease and prevent its spread. Despite the difficulties we are going through, we keep faith in God and believe that He will help us to overcome this trial.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
WION asks what matters. The question the world wanted answered.
They're having a lot of racist comments coming from the United States against Indian Americans. So this would at least be supervised to bring the U.S. relationship. What's your take on that?
Look, I'm sure that there are people that have made comments online and other places because every country in the world has stupid people. I'm sure there are stupid people here. There are stupid people in the United States that make dumb comments.
One question, one exchange, global reactions. When WION asks, the world follows. Get the WION edge.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION. World is One.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
In this rapidly changing world, is your health keeping pace? Best practices and breakthroughs busting the hype with real insights. The timeless power of yoga and ancient healing. Good food, good mood. Small steps, big impact. Your health matters. Only on WION World is One. Because nothing matters more.
Get the latest updates